here we are getting ready for the rehearsal dinner. What a view. Isn't that terrific? And here we are descending, oops, and stopping. And here's everybody getting onto the bus, getting the activities, maybe. So there's always a clown here that has to be on video.
This is the bus
And there's the star. There he is, right there. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but I think it's pretty much across the street.
A little dark in here, but we'll just get the flavor of it anyways. Little reception line. Focus on it. A little dark. Here we go to part 2. And the table arrangement. And the place. What a beautiful room. And what a beautiful setting. And the people, of course, are beautiful. Everybody's having a great time. And the food begins. Table 5 is very special. We've got the youngest guest here. Whoops. Little Zach. And Spirit. And in place.
Great. Everybody has been great. Steve has provided us with a lot of great music and accompaniment and added a little class to our evening, which, as I told Steve, it's not an easy thing to do. I said, if you want to stick around later and meet these folks, you'll see how difficult it is to add a little class to this evening. But he's done a good job. But mainly, oh, okay. We hired Steve long distance, you know, because we don't live here, so we did it on the basis of his picture. He must be great. But mainly I want to thank my wife Sheila, who has worked so hard to put all this together and to make the best evening for us. I'll see my telephone bill when we get home. But now, people over the past few months would ask me, where is the wedding? To which I would reply, why, it's in America's 57th largest city, of course. At which time, as you can imagine, they would sort of tilt their heads and their eyes would roll heavenward. You know, the way people do, and then they would sort of ask me again. And I would try to narrow it down to the actual name itself. I said St. Paul, at which time, to tell you the truth, most of them would still be tilting and squinting their heads. Until I finally laid it on them. I said, St. Paul, Minnesota, the home of Garrison Keillor. And it all became clear, although a few of the younger people here are still tilting their heads. So you'll have to bear with me. So Sheila and I said to ourselves, we have to give all these. Fortunately, so early in my speech, you're still not sure what you're doing. But those of you who are who know me, I know what you have to go through when you come to these things. And the other people are starting to get an inkling. So making use of modern technology, we really decided to get on the internet and check it out. Here we are, we wrote, having lived most of our lives in a part of the country called New England, the Boston area to be more exact. I am sure you have heard of us, Mr. Keeler. We threw tea in the water a few years back. We make way for ducklings. And now we have advanced to being the home of that baseball team of all baseball teams, the home of the Boston Red Sox. The curse of the Bambino. Adopted dyed-in-the-wool New Englanders all, it was quite a shock to us, Mr. Keeler, as you can well imagine, that the girl with whom our son was falling in love was from all places, Minnesota. Mankato, Minnesota, to be exact. If you haven't heard, it's June 7th in St. Paul. The night before, June 6th, at the St. Paul Hotel, all of our friends and family from the East Coast and wherever will be gathering for dinner to celebrate their first night in Minnesota and to toast the newlyweds to be. We would love to have you join us. Meet a few New Englanders. We will bring you a New England lobster if you like, and tell us a few stories about engagements, weddings, and the hazards of newly married life. And so I would like to present the response. Because unfortunately, Mr. Keeler is broadcasting from Ohio this weekend. And that's some other state out here in the Midwest, for those of you who come from other parts of the country. And he can't be here. But he did write back to us, and he gave us permission to read his reply tonight. And as you will see, the spirits of email have done it again. Dear Ed and Sheila, welcome to St. Paul, Minnesota, America's 57th largest city. I can't believe that we both knew this fact. Can you really believe where you will be, he wrote to us. The part of the country where there are only 3 seasons. Either winter is just over, winter is on its way, or it's winter. But you will love the people out here, he wrote. So congratulations on your intermarriage between East and Midwest. There are great people out here in the Midwest, Mr. Keeler continued. These great people are the result of that winter getting good and cold so early in the year. A place where you need to build a fire and a stove and wrap a blanket around you. Because cold, he said, draws people together. Crime drops. Acts of kindness proliferate between strangers. He said that he has been in Los Angeles on a balmy day in January and seen the glum faces of people poking at their salads in outdoor restaurants, brooding over their unproduced screenplays. People in Minnesota are much cheerier, he said, as we're all finding out, aren't we? They are used to lurching across the ice, leaning into the wind as sheets of snow swirl up in their faces, because they feel needed, he said, and because cold weather takes the place of personal guilt. The rest of you, Mr. Keeler continued, come from parts of the country where in your art museums the custodial staff has to be careful not to leave a pail and mop unattended during exhibition hours. Because that happens, it will attract a crowd of you Easterners all standing around, struck by the angularity of the openness, the vocabulary of stupidity. Out here we believe, as you New Englanders should too, Sheila and Ed, that every good thing, every morsel of food comes directly from God, who expects us to pay attention and be joyful. He said, of course, he said, this is no small task for people from Minnesota, where our idea of a compliment is, it could have been worse. So that's Garrison Keeler in abstention. To know over the past year are a great example of this, and we've met their family and know Nicole and Philippe and Michelle, and of course their shining star, of course, as far as we is concerned, our Monique. And because we share her now. We share her now, Jill and Francois, so you'll understand. Which brings us back to the happy couple, some of whose friends are here tonight, and who are just dying to say a few words. So if anybody has such desires, I'd like to ask them if they'd like to step up and take over the microphone for a couple of minutes. Anybody would like to do this? You won't believe how many volunteers there were during the reception.
A man and a friend of his from college, and there's a fair number of folks from Duke over there. It's sort of obligatory for the best man to tell a few poignant vignettes about his experiences with Soctt, or the groom, I should say, in this case, Soctt. I thought I'd tell a few vignettes and let you all decide if they're poignant, and you can be the judge of the stories. But about 2 years ago, I was in China, and Soctt came over to travel. He spent about 6 weeks. It was after he got out of business school. And we had been traveling all over. And we were riding bikes one afternoon in the middle of western China, which is literally the middle of nowhere, by a river. And Soctt came up with the very keen observation. It was more of a question. And we've been traveling for 4 or 5 weeks, so conversation ran a little slow. He said, gee, John, do you think rivers ever flow uphill? And it was nice. It got the conversation going again. Because I turned to Soctt and said, you idiot, rivers don't flow uphill. And I thought at that point we could move on. And the other poignant part of that is probably that you shouldn't criticize him ever. The second of the two stories takes place a few years earlier, and it was in 1991. I was in law school, and we used to go up to New York City for New Year's Eve parties, and Ed, don't worry, this isn't your story. But Soctt, believe it or not, complimented me on a shirt I was wearing, and I said, oh, Soctt, I have this great place in Charlottesville where you can get these shirts. They're really sells them cheap. And he said, oh, really? That's great. So I sent him one out of the blue. 6 months later, he thanked me. He said, great, thanks for the shirt. 6 months later, we were out to dinner. I said, oh, Soctt, about that shirt I sent you, can I have that $20 for it? Because I need to pay for my dinner now. And once again, I got 3 years worth of, I can't believe you made me pay for what I thought was a gift. So I guess the poignant part of that is when you be upfront with him. If you're going to give him something, give it to him. If you're supposed to pay you back for him, pay you back. But I thought, what I'd like to do is I thought this would be a great time. They're getting married. It's a good time to clean the slate. And so I feel comfortable that the river flowing uphill, downhill, that issue's been settled. The hydrologist spoke, and I trust I won't hear about this anymore. And the other issue, I suppose I did mislead Soctt, but I thought, we'll let bygones be bygones. And actually, here, Soctt, I'll give you this shirt. And I'd just like to say that I think the world of Soctt, and really treasure our friendship, and know that going forward, I treasured the opportunity to get to know Soctt and Monique as a couple and Monique as an individual and continue my relationship with Soctt and as he starts his family. I feel fortunate to have gotten to know Dr. and Mrs. Braun over the last several years and know that these guys make a great couple, and congratulations.
Well, I'm a friend of Monique. I'm Stephanie Meyer, and I met Monique 7 years ago when we were both subletting apartments in a building just outside of Boston. And after just having known Monique for a few days, I knew that I would know her for the rest of my life. She's an extraordinary person, and she lacks the narcissistic characteristics of the stereotypical artist, and instead has the unusual capacity to feel deeply about what other people around her are feeling. It's not an unusual experience to be sitting in a restaurant with Monique and to notice that her eyes have filled with tears because of the unfortunate plight of a young child 2 tables away. I've also received many distraught phone calls on Sunday afternoons after Monique has read the New York Times and came across a story describing the bleak lives of children in a war-torn country or in our own inner-city neighborhood. So, this tremendous capacity for empathy is one of the traits that makes Monique a treasured friend to many of us here. She has the ability to share both the pain and the joy of those who are close to her. And not only does she provide support, but she also brings to friendships the richness of her own inner life. So when one has a friend that is as truly magnificent as Monique, it feels very important that she find a life partner who appreciates all that is special about her. So it's wonderful to watch Soctt and Monique together because it's clear that he not only loves her as a partner, but also respects her individuality and her creativity. Most importantly, it's obvious that he makes her very happy. I think that it's inevitable when one's closest friend gets married to sort of feel like you're joining with her family in quote-unquote giving her away. However, on this occasion, I don't have the sense that I'm losing Monique's friendship, but rather that I've gained another friend who I will also know forever. Lots of
Stephanie, you're very lucky, I hope. Sorry. Wrong speech. First thing, I guess, my name is Brad Muir, and I've actually lived with Soctt for 2 years during Duke. And I have a confession for Dr. and Mrs. Braun. Soctt was not at the library. Every single time you called. I think as we get to know sort of all the Duke crowd, you'll find that we're a very, very nice bunch. But that wasn't the fun part, this is great. While we were at Duke, though, I have to say our attentions were rather focused on, to put it nicely, wine, women, and song. Academic pursuits were sort of secondary. But then there was Soctt, who made every effort to sort of elevate us, point out things like, nice classical music. This is honest to God truth. Beautiful architecture, nice music, theater. We would have nothing of it, but he really tried. Much to his credit and our discredit, we sort of just kind of said, yeah, but there's a basketball game on tonight. Kept talking. One day, though, he came to us, it was a New Year's Eve about 2 years ago, he sat us down and he said, guys, you're going to meet Monique tonight, and it's very important to me that you talk about more serious stuff. She's very important to me, and I love you all, but come on, you gotta lift it up a little bit. So we met Monique that night. It was a great time. And every time there was sort of a lull in the conversation, one of us would say, "How about that global warming?" Or, "Those Middle East peace talks are sure going well." And I think sometime later at night, Monique said to Soctt, "Your friends are really nice, but they're so serious." That's the story I came over here to tell, and I just wanted to say that,
the way all of us feel, it's just such a wonderful thing for us to see the two of them fall in love. And this was a great night for us, and thanks very much.
Can I ask if anybody...
Duke University, and to start, I'd like to thank Scott for giving us such rich material to work with. I mean, sometimes you really have to scrape together material. So Scott is really a question of thinning out. Just try to use time efficiently, I think. So I won't dwell on the irony of how Scott works for Gillette selling shaving products. That, yeah, he just started to shave regularly. Yeah, what you're talking about is a couple summers ago, I went to visit Scott up in Chicago. And that was the sweltering hot Chicago summer where, I don't know if y'all remember, there was a heat wave going through, people died, it was a horrible scene. Scott's job that summer was to work for Quaker Oats and try to sell instant oatmeal during the summer months. So it was kind of a struggling summer for him. But I was up there on business, and he got to get out of work early that day. I got to get out of work early that day. We got a chance to go rent a sailboat. They rent the boats up by Lake Michigan. Neither of us really knew what the heck we were doing, but we had the opportunity. We went to the dock master and I said, hey, we want to rent a sailboat. And I said, okay, sure. Do you have your certification cards? No. We left him back to the hotel. I said, okay, well, let me ask you a few questions. I slide back a little bit. Scott being from Swampscott, an old seafaring town, steps forward. After 10 minutes, he was quizzed on navigational signals, nautical terms, just basic, hey, how do you sail type questions. I had no idea what's going on, but Scott answered with authority and conviction and got every single question wrong. I'm wrong. I don't mean to insult you. I didn't even train him. It wasn't a shining performance, but the dock master gave us the boat anyway. And we asked him, well, why? And he said, yeah, I know you guys don't know what the heck you're doing, but he said to Scott, I like your attitude. And it's a true story, that's true. And what the dock master saw in Scott, I think it's what all of us saw. He saw a good attitude, a healthy enthusiasm for life, and just pushing yourself a little bit beyond your comfort zone. But anyway. But enthusiasm for life is a common trait that I see between Scott and Monique, and I think they'll share in that for years and years, and have a terrific relationship as they have been, and we're thrilled for both of you, and thank you for allowing us the occasion to come up here, and everybody else involved, so thank you.
Hey, borrow a poem from Libby Dole, which I know you object to. Grab the mic and interact with the crowd. One of the nice things about growing up in the Bronze House was getting that, democratic, true Massachusetts type of liberalism from Dr. Braun, which I appreciate. I subsequently said, to hell with that, but but I am fond of that for that upbringing. And it's ironic that he did mention that, because one of the things I was going to say is the Brauns have traveled throughout the world, which I'm truly envious of. And they've been to Nepal, for one. St. Paul, 57th largest city in the United States. And one of the things that Scott and I did one day is we dropped Dr. and Mrs. off at the airport on their way to Nepal. It was kind of an emotional goodbye. I mean, we said goodbye, and we weren't going to see him for 6 weeks. I didn't know what to do because I didn't know where I was going to eat. The nice thing is 6 weeks later, Scott and I packed up the Volvo and we picked them up on their way home to Nepal. So it was a nice get-together again. One of the things, Scott and I've known Scott since I was probably 5, 6 years old. And we've always been very competitive, which, is good. Competitiveness is great. But one of the stories which I love is we were probably in about 5th grade, and Risk at the time, if any of you played Risk, it's a game for world domination. And the goal is to achieve as many, take over the world. And the neat thing about it is you play with about 4 or 5 people, and you have to make alliances. And you don't know who you're aligned with at a particular time. So at the time, Scott and I, we were allies. We were going to take over part of the world and, you know, let everyone else figure it out for themselves. So we were doing a great job. We had Asia, we had Africa. We were working on our way up through South America into North America. It was a great plan. And about halfway through, I decided, well, I have no use for Scott anymore. I need North America on my own. I don't know why I'm holding that, but it made a nice prop. I need North America on my own. And at the time, Scott was furious. He's like, how can you abandon me at this time? We're about to conquer the world. And I'm like, hey, you know, it's a tough world. It's a dog world. And I'm on my own at this point. He got furious. Absolutely furious. And he's staring at me, I'm staring at him. Granted, I mean, we're about 8 years old. And, you know, it's a showdown. And he's like, how can you do this to me? I was like, you're on your own, pal. Picks up the board, throws it in my face, the chips are flying everywhere, and I'm just looking at him like, what? He's like, how could you do this to me? I'm like, hey, it's a game. Scott probably didn't think so, because he just wound up and he whacked me right in the face. Absolutely dumbfounded by that. And ironically, that was right around his birthday. And I didn't get invited to his birthday party that year. And I want to mention that that was a great birthday party because they went to the Red Sox-Yankees game, which that was right around the mid-'70s time, and you know, it was a hell of a rivalry going. And I had to go to school that day, and everyone else was at Scott's birthday party. And so he holds a grudge. And then I was thinking, Scott was the best man at my wedding. And, you know, Scott and Monique get married. Fantastic. It's about 3 months out. I haven't heard a thing. I don't know what's going on. So I'm thinking, is this a 4th grade thing? I don't know. Finally, he gave me a phone call, says he's going to get married in St. Paul. Well, that's good, because I didn't even know where Monique was from. So I was like, okay, so I guess we'll book plans for St. Paul. So, I mean, I was just concerned that Scott might hold a grudge since 4th grade. I mean, I'm the one who should be holding the grudge, because I didn't know. But just in hindsight, I think growing up in Swampscott, I'm here, Andy's here. The Brons have been excellent parents to Scott. They've been excellent parents to me, which is but I think, you know, my parents have had a strong relationship. Andy's parents, the Brons, and I think that's important because as you get married, I got married 1.5 years ago, and it was, you know, the greatest experience of my life. So I just hope that you have as much fun as Amy and I have had. So good luck.
I was finally going to fly away.
I know well, actually, I've known Edward since the day he was born, and I remember Edward used to come down from Glens Falls to our house, and he used to eat at our house as a 1 or 2 year old, and when we get home from either school or work, we were told that, shh, Mother would open up his mouth, get the food, put it in, and then hold his hand over the face. Because as soon as she took the hand off the face, he would throw up. And my father said to his mother, Sylvia, why don't you take it home? But just something to you, Monique, about Scott. I once went to Florida for about 10 days or so, and I don't know how the word got up to Edward that I was going to Florida, because an hour after I decided to go, I got a telephone call from Edward, and he said, you're going to Florida? And I said, yes. He said, can I come down with you? And I said, sure, why not? says, can I bring Scott? I said, oh. So Scott came down with Edward, and Scott was about 14 or 15, I think, at the time. And he still didn't get over the John Wayne movies. And every morning, you know, the sun in Florida in December was beautiful. There was Scott watching John Wayne with a patch over his eye. And I used to say to him, you know, Scott, come out and go on the beach. He's got to wait for John Wayne to catch the bad guys. And you know John Wayne made 85 movies. He never caught the bad guys. One time while we were bike riding, we were up to at the end of Longboat Key, I don't know if anyone's familiar with it, but it's 10 miles long. And the three of us were on the bikes and it started to rain. And it was pouring. So Scott went in and sat down on the floor and got a comic book from the drugstore, sat in the corner and read the comic books. He says to me, Howie, why don't you go back and get the car? Edward said to me, Howie, why don't you go back and get the car? I didn't dare call his mother, my sister, and say I didn't get the car, so I went back and got the car. 10 miles on the bike in the pouring rain. I come back, and I bring the car around, and Scott says, can you bring it closer? And I'll bring it closer. So I got it closer, and Scott got into the car. But he, God forbid, God, thank God, he was dry. Because I didn't want Scott to catch a cold, because I think Sheila would kill him. I'm looking into the future now, and I see that Scott will probably be about the 50th President of the United States. And I can see him raising his right hand, and Sheila being at the ceremonies is going to nudge the person next to her. She's going to say, see that boy there, that man there, his right hand raised? The person's going to say yes. They're just going to say, you know, his father and his father were doctors. We wanted to, Goldie and I had traveled many miles to get here. We took a plane. First we drove from Florida up to New York, and we left our hubcaps there. And got onto the plane, and we took a direct flight to Minneapolis. But we didn't know what Minneapolis was. In fact, the guy who at Newark Airport said, why are you going to Minneapolis? We said, doesn't everyone go to Minneapolis? And he said, yeah, everyone goes to Minneapolis. So we got this direct flight. We went from Newark to Washington, to Charlotte, Indianapolis, Cleveland, Detroit, Chicago, O'Hare. Then we got to, as far as Chicago, then we took a direct flight to Milwaukee. And we finally landed, after 6 weeks of traveling, at the airport. And we called up the embassy suites where we are staying. We asked them, you know, for a courtesy car. They said yes. And we said, well, they said, where do we meet it? They said, on the curb. Goldie, my lovely wife of too many good number of years. So we said, well, how do we get to the place? They said, well, just at the baggage rack, get your bags, walk about 600 feet, go down an escalator, walk across the concourse, go up another escalator, go over to across a road there, go underneath the tunnel, and walk. And we said, well, what about the bags? Oh. But anyway, Goldie carried the bags, and we finally got there. And I just want to end this, I know I'm going on too long. It's just to Scott and Monique. And Monique we met several years ago. And Francois and Jill, and awfully lovely daughter. And we're just thrilled to be here.
I'll say something. I can't see who it is. Do I have to come up to the mic? Yes. Yeah, you have to come up to the mic.
With Scott, and first of all, I want to thank Dr. and Mrs. Ron for inviting us to this magnificent event. And I haven't met Dr. and Mrs. Hamzy yet, but I'd like to thank you guys for bringing Monique into this world, because like someone else said, she is magnificent and she is creative, and I think Scott and her are going to challenge each other for a long time. I'm also kind of glad to say I'm not the only one that thought Scott had a grudge against me. Billy apparently had a little fight with Scott when they were 8 years old. I remember when I got the invitation to Scott's wedding, I figured, oh well, there's going to be a rehearsal dinner, and everyone's going to have to say a little something. And I tried to come up with something that I would say. And I remember when we were about 12, maybe 13, back in those days of presidential fitness, we had these jump runs, and 60-yard dashes, and 500-yard dashes. And Scott and I were one day practicing pull-ups or something like that. I had a little mud room or a back porch in my house, and we had a chin-up bar. And we used to swing on it and horse around in our window. I didn't see him again for about 5 years. I don't know if he was afraid of my dad or my mom or me or whatnot. But we got together again, I think it was in Spanish class, and we were talking about Red Sox stats or something stupid like that. And over the last 10 years, I think we've remained really great friends. We've been on other sides of the country, but I remember meeting him in, where was it? Fort Lauderdale or?
Right.
Something like that, spring break a few years ago. And I thought I lived with all my other friends from home. We shared apartments, and I never did with Scott. And I remembered that we did New York for about a week. And that's why we don't live with each other. I would just like to say I'm really happy to be a part of this wedding, and I'm really proud of you guys, and I think you'll have a great life together.
Because we have come to know our Monique so well over the past 2 years, we've come to know her as such a fine and wonderful person. And we have found her in that special place in our hearts that is only reserved for your very loved ones. We consider ourselves to be amongst the very fortunate who can say that. And we hope that Sheila and I and the rest of our family and friends will have that special place in her heart as well. And should it last forever for all of us. So without further ado, glasses in hand, I present to you, guess who? Monique and Scott. Look live. Look live. Look Now you can do a better job than that guy.
First of all, I deny everything. I'd just like to start off by saying that. And I also like to start off by saying that all of these horrible, horrible things, these grudges and everything, you know, they're over 29 years. I just want to make sure that everybody knows it's not a 2-year period that all these things happen. This doesn't work that well. Bill was right. I'll just speak loudly. It's, you know, I knew I'd have to get up and say just a little something here tonight, and really wasn't sure what it would be. You know, I look over at my folks, and I know part of them probably feels like they can't quite believe this day's come. Part of them probably feels like they thought this day would never come. So I'm sure they're pretty happy. You know, I can echo, it's weird to be able to get up here and echo Bill and Andy that I grew up with, and to be able to say that they've given me so much. I mean, yes, they gave me nice chicken and pasta and everything like that tonight, but more importantly, just over the years, it's just been, you know, whatever I am, like it or not, Brian, I have to say it's due to my folks, and they've just been about the best parents anybody could ever have. So first, I just want to say thank you for that. Monique's ready to go now because she's ready to talk for ages, and she's not even going to. But no, I'm sorry, now I'm on the roll. And then I also wanted to. Didn't you hear all this? Didn't you hear Bill and John and all these? I also wanted to thank the Hamsies who I had a chance to meet. Gosh, I'm not even sure when. I guess about 2 years ago. Monique will finish my sentences too, which they don't really end. And so I had a chance to meet them 2 years ago, and it's just been lovely knowing, you know, them every second, and Nicole and Philippe and Michelle. Also, I'm just thrilled to death to be joining their family. You know, about 2 weeks ago or so, or maybe no, it must have been just about a week ago. Monique was already out here, and I was, calling religiously, just like I was supposed to. And I think one of the times Monique wasn't there, and I got Francois on the phone, and I think in the middle he slipped up in the middle of the conversation, and he actually called me son, and he said, do you believe I just did that? I can't believe it. And he chuckled, and I loved it. I'm still not going to let Monique go, because now I really feel like I'm on a roll. What's that? Yeah, you have to stay up here, sorry. So aside from all the parents and all the great things, the parents and the in-laws, and then there's Monique. And, in the last few weeks, this really isn't supposed to be a roast about Monique. It sounds like it's about in the last few weeks or months or years, everybody has said, everybody at work. I told my father this the other day. I have no idea what people talk to me at work before I was getting married. Now I see everybody in the hallway, and all they say, you getting nervous, you getting ready? And I have no clue what they used to talk to me about, nor do I have a clue what they'll talk to me about when I get back from the honeymoon. But, so everybody has to say, everybody has the same question, are you nervous? Are you nervous? They almost ask it enough to make you nervous, but not quite. And I think that I realize I'm not nervous at all, and I think the reason it's too bad there's not a buddy of mine from business school here, because he's the only one that's actually in this next story. Mike had referenced I was in Chicago, and I was there for a summer trying to find out some sort of great way to get people to actually cook oatmeal in the summer. And I was solving, world problems, things like that. And I met Monique. We were doing, somebody of mine from business school down there, and we were doing our best to try and just live it up and burn the candle at both ends. And it was maybe our only time in Chicago, and it turned out to be my only time in Chicago. And we had a great time that summer. And probably the greatest time was the second to last night that I was in Chicago. I was actually set up on a date, and a couple other folks were here that night as well. I was set up on a date, and I met somebody at work, and she said, "Oh my God, I just met her. You really have to come to my birthday party. There's going to be all these girls here." So I went, and there was this girl waiting for me there, and she hated me, and I hated her, and it wasn't Monique, by the way. However, the good part is that Monique was there that night too. So I met Monique. We chatted late into the night. And I met Monique, and the next night, my last night in Chicago, I actually was out with this buddy business school and a couple other people, and I remember telling them across the table, and I didn't remember until 7 months later, that I remember saying, last night I met the girl of my dreams, and you've heard that story. And it was true then, and it's true now, and will always be true. It just as coincidence had it, I was heading up to Minneapolis about 24 hours later, and Monique at that time hadn't yet moved to Chicago. She was still living up in Minneapolis, so we got together, one day in the afternoon, and this was kind of, I didn't know if this was a date. I was hoping this was kind of a date. I really had no idea, but I know I had about 5 hours to spare before I had to go to some corporate cocktail party that night. And in those 5 hours, this was Monique's chance. She had said, "When you come up to Minneapolis, give me a call. I'm going to give you a great tour of the city and everything." So I went up to Minneapolis, called her up. She picked me up at the hotel, just like she said she would. And then we did Monique's errands. For a good couple hours we did Monique's errands. And really it was probably just 1 or 2 hours, or 1 or 2 errands, but we did the errands for a couple hours because we got lost in Minneapolis too. She'd only lived here, grew up here. She was 26 at the time, so there was no reason to expect that she would know her way around. But I have to say that one day of doing errands, I have to admit, I did errands with Monique for a couple hours, and I can look back and say, I said that day, and I can look back and say that I still had just the greatest time in the world doing errands that day. And I could say right then that if I could have the greatest time in the world doing errands with Monique, I'd have the greatest time in the world doing anything with her. And I just want to say, I'm thrilled to death to be marrying you. And can't wait to do our errands together forever.
That is so hard to
follow, I think. But I just want to say, I have been present so many times when people have asked us how we met, and I have never heard in such great detail that story. That was well worth waiting for. Scott always passes it off to me. Well, this is just great. I mean, this is so special to have all of our family and friends here to celebrate with us. It's really wonderful. And I don't know that I have anything very profound to say, except that this is just, we love to have everyone here sharing in our joy, and hope that we will all know each other for years and years to come. And so thank you for coming. And I wanted to say for a minute about, I have to read a little bit, or at least reference my poorly written notes, but when Scott and I first got to know each other, we spent a good deal of time talking about our families, and it became clear to us after a little while that we came from very similar backgrounds, and our families had really similar values, and it made us happy, I think, to know that we shared this sort of integral thing. And when I was doing research on these many, many wedding traditions and ideas, I came across something in a wedding book that said that the tradition of giving a flower to the mother of the bride and the new mother-in-law on the wedding day is a symbol for the desire of the relationship, that it will embrace the new families, that it will last forever. And when I read that, I had to smile, because I thought, we don't need to try very hard to get these two families to be part of one larger new family. It was a great pleasure for both Scott and I think, to see the way in which our parents interacted from the first time that they met. I know that I had a few minutes, even though I thought I wasn't going to be remotely nervous, of a fast heartbeat, and then it sort of quieted down and we could relax and know that they were having a great time together. But it has given us great joy to see our parents enjoying each other's company, as we also enjoy our parents' company. And so I just want to say to the family that I came from, I'm so grateful for the love and support, and I have such strong feelings that I can never adequately express for the life I've been given. And to the family that I will join, I am so grateful for the way that I have been accepted and treated, and made to feel from the very beginning like one of the family. So thank you.
When we first meet our beloveds, or our future beloveds, or betrothed, you know, they look at each sentence we say as if it comes from, such a wonderful sentence. Then, of course, as we get closer to the wedding, they begin to finish our sentences for us. And don't worry, Scott, in a few years, as those of us who have been around a while can attest to, she will then begin your sentence. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Thank you for putting up with us. There is dessert and coffee and Steve, and thank you all very, very much.
Here we are, next day with Roger on the bus. Everybody, tour of Minneapolis, St. Paul. Everybody's on the bus, you see the date, and the actual time. Swing around here.
This one right here, this Greenland, the Gothic revival. You see some of the Greenwood painting American Gothic that's very similar.
Beautiful park surrounded by all the old homes
By the
of St. Paul.
1960s and 70s, this park was all run down. The gazebo was long gone. The fountain that you see there was missing, had been taken out. It was kind of a weak net. The bicentennial, which
Beautiful homes.
Ramsey came out here in 1849. He built this house in 1868, 1872.
It's the Ramsey house.
Second Empire, but he had more money than forefathers would use. And Ramsey's wife passed away, and his daughter, who had 3 children, moved back into the house. Her husband had become ill. They lived in Minnesota. Her 2 daughters, who never married, lived in the house.
Everybody going into the cathedral. Beautiful cathedral. Wow, isn't that pretty?
We'll make a couple of remarks about the inside, and then we'll get a chance to walk through the building and we'll come back out here.
This is very, very pretty. Wow, stretch.
President Kennedy and previous here for the
Very
So
pretty.
it's a very important, even though it is the Catholic institution. For that reason, there's always been a very warm relationship between this cathedral and the wider community here. It's really the city's cathedral when it comes to this churches. And as we walk up through here, I mean, you do not step up on the altar because of the security. They mirror up into the wall. The foreman said, sorry boys, we're not going to tear that word down. It added this one on the
End of this year, and it's no deal to be
Home of the Minnesota Twins.
If you look over to the left here, you can see Pillsbury and empty others have been reconditioned. You can see the Whitney Hotel used to be a Sarasota flour mill. Fought this change in their own ways. Minneapolis fought fire for fire. They built a mall in downtown. They put it out, and it's been extremely successful. We'll talk more about Nicholas Mall, but first I want to introduce you to this building over here on your left. You know what a suspension bridge is? That's the Golden Gate Bridge, where the support comes from the great cables strung above the bridge deck rather than down below. This building is a suspension building. It gets its support from cables in the building that are anchored on opposite ends and closed in the middle on the back. There. We have an alternative weekly newspaper here called City Pages that about 4 years ago, enlisting in the best of issue, they don't get into the best movie counts, the best ribs, but they get right down into the nitty-gritty of Twin Cities culture. They said, and I have to word this carefully here, because
One more view of this.
no one needs a huge underground vault to put money in, so it's very likely that this...
Very pretty water fountains there. Beautiful park, the Walker Museum, the Cherry. That's pretty neat. And Minneapolis skyline. Here's a beautiful, beautiful lake. Downtown Minneapolis.
Made good as a single career woman. So this house became this instant tourist attraction. But people would go up and knock on the door and ask if Mary was home. Would she want to come out and visit with them? They'd even take her for fun. It's been through, I think, 2 owners since then, and the people that live there are far better steward about tours. Before they unlock the door, let them...
This is amazing. What a mall. Just incredible. Complete Ferris wheel. Unreal. Everybody having a nice lunch at the Great Mall of America. Nice view of the Mississippi from the bus as we're heading home from the Great Mall of America. Pretty nice river. A little on the brown side, but otherwise pretty nice. All the containers to carry the grain up and down the river. Boy, yeah, this is pretty nice boat in there.
Walked here from the house out today and yesterday and then all the way down.
One block there. Nice boat. That's different. This beautiful place. Looks like New Orleans. Every room is off the apron. Oh, like this?
Should get them in the elevator.
Yeah. Oh.
And down there's Lauren. I mean,
And that's not all we're going to record on the... Here we are, the last day. The brunch after the big party.
I'll be fine.
What time do you get up for work?
Ronnie, all set. Barb.
You can get me on by 7.
So, got your mouth.
And then that way you can just drop him off.
The reason there aren't that many people inside is because they're all out here. Look at this line. It goes all the way around and back. Wow. That's the end of the line. And back in the room. One last time. Just a little bit more here. Focusing on the lowest one. Where is it? There's somebody having a great breakfast.
Well, this is all cut up. Why don't you eat this and then we'll cut that up.
And I think I'm going to sign off with the next generation. I think that's the way to do it. So there we go. Bye.